Okay, I think we're sounding pretty good. So thank you all for coming to the Nashville Game Developers panel here at the Grand Ole Game Room Expo. How's everybody's expo going so far? Yeah? I heard we had some injustice and some high score highlights going on. What else has been your favorite part of the expo? Anybody else? Just shout it out. TurboGrafx 16. Yeah. Guitar Hero. Okay. VR. Okay. Fellas, our goal is to beat all of that and be the highlight of the Grand Ole Game Room Expo for these fine people who are here. We are the Nashville Game Developers. We are a nonprofit in the state of Tennessee as of just a few months ago. So we're an organization that promotes game design, game development, the skills, and the creation of games here in the Middle Tennessee area. My name's John Gale. I'm the treasurer of the organization. That means I control the money, which means I have the power. I use the game engines Unity and RPG Maker, and I've got a game out on iOS and Android called Hiragana Breaker because I teach Japanese part-time, so I wanted to make an app for my students to help them learn their Japanese characters. So I got cards up here if anybody wants a card later, and I'm going to pass it over to this person.
Hello, my name is Russell Maringer, and I actually own a sound design and audio post-production studio right up the road called NPEL Audio in the Film House building. I am also a independent game developer called RDM Games is my little sole proprietor, and I am currently the secretary of the Nashville Game Developers. And I have a game available now on Android and iOS called Perfect Fit Hex. It's a philosophical puzzle game. I quite enjoy it. And then I've got a couple more currently in process. And I work a lot, of course, with audio, with things like Pro Tools and a lot of sound design tools and middleware like Fmod and Wise. But also when it comes to game engines, I work with Stencil, Unity, Unreal, and then dabble in some just programming as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here because a lot of people come to these type of panels. It's Music City. A lot of people are into music and audio and have a lot of questions that this guy can definitely field for you. Okay, next.
Hi, I'm Corey Martin. I've been making games for since 2005 in some capacity. Started as a hobby, and it's morphed into a weird job type thing. I'm working on my first solo-ish commercial venture, which is a game called Leapin' Lads. It's going to be coming out on iOS and Android.
When?
Next year in perhaps February, maybe January,
right.
Maybe September. Who knows?
Stay tuned.
Also, Russell here is doing the audio for the game, and it sounds really, really crisp and satisfying.
Well, thank you.
You can check out my work at coreymartin.net. You don't have to look at it now, and you won't remember that, but I wanted to say that anyway because I got a website. And I'm the event planner for Nashville Game Developers.
Okay.
And I am Dan Ledford. I'm filling in for Megan. I am also part of the Nashville Game Developer Group. I've been with you guys since probably about 2010, I think. Joined up, and I've got no games available right now. There is one that I worked on as a team called, what was it called? It's a long title one. Endless Terrain Bullet Hell Flyer. That's what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
I was
Yes.
at the game jam.
Yeah, my $5 game, as I call it, because I made $5 off of it. Working on a card game, of course, we also do a lot of other things such as board games, card games,
Right.
and such. And if you're interested in that, I'm building a card game right now based on election.
Yeah, it looks fun. So the Nashville Game Developers is sort of our regular activities. If we start on a weekly basis, if you go to like our Facebook group, just search on Facebook Nashville Game Developers, and someone will let you in the group, and Corey will let you in the group. On a weekly basis, usually we have something that we call a work meet, where we get together at a coffee shop or someplace, and everybody just brings their laptops and works on whatever they're working on, code or audio or art, what have you. This month is a little bit different because November is National Game Design Month, and so on the weekends there'll be some events that we'll probably likely be a part of, like this one. And so all of that always gets posted on our Facebook group and on meetup.com. If you're on meetup.com, you can find us on there.
I have the dates.
Yeah?
These came in today.
Okay.
We are confirmed at the Adventure Science Center. We're going to have work meets on the 24th from 12 to 4 p.m. and also on the 30th from 9:30 to 12 p.m. That's an early one. So tune in later this month. But we're going to have a work meet probably This upcoming Saturday.
Next week.
Next Saturday.
Yeah.
In 1 week.
And those are very casual, come and go as you please. Anyone's welcome, any skill level. If you got questions or anything, we'll be happy to field them. Also, on a monthly basis, we have our bigger monthly meetup where someone will give a presentation about a topic or demo a game. And this month, November 25th, right, is a demo day. Where if somebody's working on a project, they can come and let other people play it and get feedback. I'm going to be demonstrating a Santa Claus simulator for Google Cardboard. I don't know if you've ever seen a Google Cardboard. I made a little game for that. What are you guys going to demo on demo day?
I'm not sure yet.
Not sure yet?
Yeah.
Leaping lads?
Yeah, leaping lads. Come leap. Come be lads. Help me polish my game and figure out what the bugs and issues are. Thank you.
Yep.
Daniel,
I'll
you
probably
gonna-
let you guys play test the Clump game.
The Clump, your card game about the
Yes.
election? Okay. So again, you can find the links for that in our Facebook if you'd like to sign up and demo something. The other thing we do about 3 times a year is something called a game jam. Has anybody ever heard of that before? Well, you guys have participated. You got the T-shirt. I'm wearing the T-shirt. And so the way a game jam works is on Friday night, we give you an idea or a theme for a game, okay? And then by Sunday afternoon, you have had to have made a game within that weekend and present it to everybody else. So it is a super intense experience. I've learned more in the weekends of game jams than I have in weeks of taking online videos for programming. It is so intense. And our next one is the big one, the Global Game Jam, which we got some T-shirts for. That's January 31st through February 2nd. And again, you can find that information. Again, anybody, any skill level is welcome to participate on that. If you register before January 14th, you get a free T-shirt like we're wearing. And we also need people to sponsor and donate to it. It costs about $3,500 to bring this event to Nashville. And we have a GoFundMe page where anybody can just chip in $5. You can take out your phone right now. GoFundMe.com, Global Game Jam, $5. And all that helps us bring this event. We're going to have at least 150 people participate in the Game Jam. And this past year, 2019, we had about 40 projects made over the weekend here in Nashville. And you can see and play those on the website. So that's the basics of what we do, Nashville game developers. And we want to bring this panel to you guys at the expo to answer your questions about game design, game development, and the scene here in Nashville. So does anybody in the audience have any questions for the panel? Just throw up the hands and we'll get to them. Anybody? You want to talk about feelings? We'll talk about feelings. Yeah, in the back, yeah, first. And then we'll come to you.
It sounds like you're kind of at different levels of game completion as far as what you want to do. Like, it seems to me it's always kind of hard to finish up something. How do you kind of come to that conclusion? Like, is it just a deadline, or is it just what makes you decide that I'm finished with this and I'm going to release it and be done with it?
Yeah, that's a big question. Anybody want to handle that for who's just released games? Russell, I think you're probably the most recent person
Sure.
to ship a game.
Yeah, so actually, my game, Perfect Fit, the puzzle game, I started on it in January of this year and then released it only like 3 months later. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I just loved the idea. And also, I came up with a very strict roadmap of what exactly I wanted in the game, how many levels I wanted the game, and then I sort of added a little bit of fluff, as you could say, that kind of aligns that roadmap. That doesn't add extra levels, but just makes those levels better, if that makes sense. So it starts off as just a puzzle game, but then on top of that, there's a narrator that's talking to you that kind of gives you a sort of philosophical insight. But essentially, my main advice is to just have essentially an outline of what exactly you want in the game, and then once you complete that, you just have to tell yourself like, yo, it's done. Yeah. I mean, you definitely want to share it with people and have them play it and find any problems or typos in my case. And then fix those quickly, and then just release the game out into the world, And especially if it's your first release, I hate to quote Nike, but just do it. Like, just get it out there, because people are gonna love it or they're gonna hate it, or you can just keep making more.
And you've even said like, oh man, I want to make some more levels, or I want to
Yeah.
do this, but you definitely held yourself to stop
Yep.
at a point and ship it. So that's something we call feature creep in game design. Is when you're working on it and you've got, first you want to start with a minimum viable product, which is the absolute minimum game loop that someone can play and interact with, and go from there. And then as you're working on it, I think all of us have been like, man, wouldn't it be cool if? Like that's the flag. Wouldn't it be cool if the game had this? Wouldn't it be cool if the player could do that? And you can get in an endless spiral of wouldn't it be cool with.
Yeah.
And
I'm
you
still
have to
doing
stop
that.
it. You're still doing that.
I'm still
How
doing
long
that.
have you been working on Leaping Lads?
It'll be, I think, 2 years coming up on the 12th or the 11th.
Yeah.
I know it's close to my birthday, November 13th. You don't have to get me anything, but no, don't, please. Yeah, dude, 2 years. That's a
2
long
years.
time, man.
Yeah. It took me like a year to make my game. And to answer what I did is the first year of the Grand Old Game Room Expo, I actually went to Anime Blast Chattanooga, an anime convention, and I paid for a booth, like $250 or whatever. And I was like, man, I'm paying for this booth. I better have that game done by the time I go to that anime convention. So that was like a huge motivation for me. It's like that gave me that deadline.
Or, yeah, do something similar like I have. I've got an election coming up next year, a big one, right? I
Yeah.
think the president might be getting elected next year. I
Yeah.
want to get the game ready, done, and out for the hands of people at least a month before.
Right, because that your game is like has that real comedic feel
Yes,
just about
yes.
elections in itself, and
Yeah.
if
Current
you
events.
miss the boat of the election, then
Yeah, it's
people
pointless.
kind of don't really care.
Correct.
For the next 4 years.
It's about like trying to buy Game of Thrones games in 20 years from now when nobody cares.
Uh-huh. or make a Game of Thrones.
Oh
game,
yeah, make a yes.
like 5 years from now. That's what it'd be like. Yeah.
I think the problem with my game is my outline was too big. I
Yeah.
had too much stuff planned. But I look at it now and I had like, so I have like a grass area, but then I was gonna have like 6 different variations of the grass area. It's gonna be like 4 different types of forests with different trees. It's gonna be like a village area. There's gonna be plains, and it's like, dude, that's too much work.
Yeah.
So now it's like I've cut it back, but it's still taking a long time. Also, I don't know if I'm a perfectionist. Maybe I just work slow. I don't know what's going on. It's probably both. I want the game to be real good because I want it to do well. So I'm trying to make everything good. And if I see something where it's like, I could see the game not doing well because of this thing, I try and fix it. I don't know if that's good advice. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, because that's another thing Wolfgang brought up one time. One of our other members, it's like, how do you make a game successful, whether that's commercially or critically? And his answer was just make a good game. And that is a lot to unpack. There's a lot behind that, but we won't go to it. We'll get to the next question you had right here in the front.
Expo specific. How do you guys plan to make the next year better?
The Global Game Jam better? Yeah. Were you at it at 2019?
No.
Okay. One thing I want to do is get. I'm the organizer of it too. By the way, I'm like the guy who has to raise all the money and everything. I want to get more people involved because we host it at Vanderbilt University, and we have quite a few Vanderbilt students who participate because it's right there. But we don't really have any Belmont or Lipscomb or MTSU students. So I want to reach out to other student groups and other types of people because, again, anyone's welcome. Like, you don't have to be a programmer or anything like that. You can show up, and that's part of the fun is just challenge yourself. Make a game by the end of the weekend. Doesn't matter how you do it. Like, you accomplish that. So that's one thing I want to do to make it better. That was the big thing on my mind. I don't know if anybody else has any suggestions. I'm open to them.
I don't want to watch the keynotes anymore.
Yeah. It's sort of an internal thing. They usually have what's called a keynote speaker. So they'll have somebody, quote unquote, from the games industry. I'm being very generous with those quotes.
Yeah.
And they give a talk. And usually it's supposed to be pretty inspiring. And in 2019, we had Rami Ismail. From Vlanbeer Games. Have you ever heard of him? Ridiculous Fishing, Nuclear Throne, some big indie hits. I'm saying that right? Nuclear.
Yeah. Also, Lufttrousers.
I don't know that one.
Super
But
great box.
He's had some real success as an indie game developer, and he gave a really inspiring speech. But then there's some other people that just get up there and they just talk about whatever.
One of the girls was in a jacuzzi on a
Yeah.
roof, and she was like, "Hi, Global Game Jam. Sorry my video's late. I've been very busy in my hot tub."
Getting ready for the festival. She said festival, and I was like, it's not a festival. It's a game jam. So what we've decided, the Global Game Jam is an international event. It happens all over the world.
It's global.
It's global. And we host the Nashville site. So everybody has the same theme and the same keynotes. And one thing we've kind of chosen to do in Nashville is cut the video content and everything down. So we just have one really good keynote. And so that's one of the ways we try to improve upon it, because time is of the essence at a game jam. If you spend 20 minutes watching YouTube videos of people talk about nothing, yeah, come Sunday at 4 o'clock, you're like, man, that's 20 minutes I could have spent fixing these bugs or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
Especially at the end, you're like, man, I wish I had 20 more minutes.
yeah. You're like, I wish I had 5 more minutes. No, I wish I had 20 more minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, then you find 20 more bugs.
Yeah.
The curse
yeah.
of the game dev, right?
Right. Yeah. Great question. Other questions out there? Anything anybody's got? Okay, we'll go Superman and then you. So Superman first.
So, just so I'm understanding, it's that you guys are all indie gamers or indie game developers. So, is there anyone that like has in the past worked for or wants to work for like an actual like studio? And I'm just curious, like what the differences are in perception of going like an indie dev route versus like getting in with a studio somewhere.
Right, getting hired and getting a job at a studio.
right.
Yeah.
And being indie, do you guys? I'm assuming were like more like commissions and whatever your game makes and stuff. And like how does that all work and the difference?
Being in a studio can be incredibly soul crushing. Knowing people who work in studios, it can also be fine, but it can also be very soul crushing. It kind of depends on where you work, I guess, and like how happy you are with the job you're doing.
Right, and here in Nashville specifically, there's not a big studios for EA or any of the AAA games. There's a one Benson Studios. They do contract work for other people mostly, and Triega down in Franklin. They're going to be releasing their game hopefully in December. Their first game.
Technically, Wolf has a. I guess
Oh,
you could
Wolf
call it
Gang.
Poppy. Yeah.
Yeah, Wolfgang
Yeah.
has Poppy Works, which is like a
He's still kind of an indie though. Like
That's true.
he does a lot of porting. So if a game's successful on Steam, he'll port it to the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation Vita, and he's had a lot of success with that.
yeah.
I feel though, I mean, it's great, it's brilliant, but he's like signing contracts and shuffling stuff and
Yeah.
porting stuff. Whereas someone who's making a game from scratch, it's us,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the indies, and then like Triega. But again, like,
Well, to be fair, I think Wolfgang wants to make his own games. It's just
oh yeah.
it's easier to make money like
Oh, he's like one of the
Doing work
most
for other
successful
games.
people in our group.
Yeah.
Doing the porting. So I mean, all the power to him for that. The thing is, like these studios that I mentioned, like they're not openly hiring all the time, and if they do have a job open, and it's for like senior Unreal developer, over 5 years experience working on AAA games in Unreal. It's not. There's not really like entry level jobs and things like that in this area. That's part of our mission, is to kind of in the long term, thinking years down the road, to change that and make this a more viable scene for not just indies scrapping around like us, but for studios. So I think that answered part of your question. The other is like, are there people who come to the group and want jobs? I think yes. I think it's a great place to come and like make games for a game jam, because I have seen people like come here with like degrees. They've got tens of thousands of dollars of student debt. They went to like Full Sail University, got a degree in game design, and like can't get a job in the industry. And I'm like, well, what have you made at a game jam? What's on your itch.io profile, which is where you host games, itch.io? What do you got out there on the App Store? And they'll be like, nothing. And I'm like, well, if I were like hiring somebody as someone at a game studio, I'd rather have someone who shipped products and
Right.
worked on things at game jams than someone who just had a degree and studied a lot of theory. I don't know how you guys
Oh,
feel about
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Experience is very important. Experience is the most important thing in anything. Like,
Right.
Go out there and make bad games. I mean, make as many, in a sense, learn through
Right.
the bad games,
Yeah.
because they're looking for those too.
I feel like everybody knows how to be good at game development. It's just a lot of work. You just make games and talk. You show your stuff to people and take feedback and always try and improve and everything. Like,
Oh.
it's just got to put in the work, man.
Yeah.
And then you can get a job at a studio. You could make good indie games if you're good enough, and maybe they'll do well. maybe.
I don't know if you keep up with Extra Credits. That's one of my favorite game design video series. But they talked about that because some people, there's different paths. Some people do get out of college and work at like a AAA studio, and then they go indie. Some people go indie for a while, then they get the job at the AAA studio. Like there's no one set path to do it. The most important thing is that you do it. You make games and you work on games. So
Curious, can I do a follow-up?
yeah.
Sure.
So you mentioned earlier that you've been working on a game for I don't know, the last couple of years or something. I'm just wondering in my head, but I actually dabbled in .NET C#. I'm a SQL developer, and I've
Okay.
always wondered about this route and the time commitment it would take. So, like, does that include? Well, is 2 years with a 3-month hiatus and like 10 minutes a day, or is this 2 years, 10 hours a day? I never sleep. I'm red in the face, or somewhere in between. Or
I ain't working no 10-hour days, man. I wish I could. It's been like I haven't worked as much as I could have, which is I'm kind of kicking myself over. I have had issues with motivation a lot of the times when you're like not punching in a clock and like you don't have like hard deadlines. Be like, yeah, I'll do that tomorrow, and then that tomorrow becomes the next day and the next day and the next day, and then it gets pushed off forever, and then you might work like an hour a day, and it's like, what am I doing, man? But recently I've been working a lot more. It's definitely not 2 years of like full-time work. If I were working full-time hours, like 40 hours a week, this probably could have been done, I don't know, after a year or maybe even less, I'd say.
I think it's good. I gave you some good advice, I think, one time.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because I said,
Oh,
like,
go to the library?
Yeah, go to the library.
It's
like,
cold there, man. I don't know what it is about the Laverne Library. It's cold.
I've never been. Don't know.
I was like, so, I mean, to
Need
kind
to.
of like set work hours, it's like, okay, if the library's open from 10 to 5, those are my work hours. Like that. And what I used to, I mean, most of us have to work full time at something else. And it's like, okay, I get off at 5 and I go to the Starbucks down the street and I'm there till 7 o'clock because that's when traffic dies down. So from 5 to 7, that's my work time. Like setting that habit, I think, is really important. Otherwise, you get in that pattern of I'll do it tomorrow,
Yeah.
and then the 3 months go by.
Also,
I was about to say, one nice thing about being indie is that you really don't have to worry about the timeline of 2 years, 3 years. It can take as long as, in a sense, you really need. For me, I enjoy it, so I'm going to take. I may take 5 hours and enjoy it, or if I only want to go for about an hour, I'm going to go for about an hour. And if I need to wait a day, I can wait a day.
yeah. I want to move out of my mom's house. So.
That's when you get a real job and work 9 to 5.
So a lot of us do this kind of as a side gig, right? So like I said, I have the studio up there, and that's what I do 9 to 6 every day. And then afterwards, I'm at home like, oh, now I can start working on my tower defense game that I'm working on or whatnot. So, much like Corey, he said he's been working on Leaping Lads for a couple of years. I don't know if I want to tell you how long I've been working on this tower defense game. Probably upwards of 4 now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 3.5 to 4.
About it, yeah, because you showed it off pretty early.
Yeah,
What you
and
had.
I mean, it's a much better product now than what it was then. But the interesting thing about that is that you mentioned about sort of contracts or kind of like working with other people. I actually have an artist that I originally met at a game jam here, and I'm paying him to do the work. And, the whole thing is that it might be something that we're doing on the side, but we're working together. And that's what we're really trying to do is get people to work together in the town. Like all the talent is here. It's amazing. The art, the audio, no, the programming, everything. Like all the talent is here. The game design, writers. We have an amazing writer in Toya who is also a member of the board with us. She's the vice president. And it's part of our prerogative to get people working together and making games. We want to support each other, finishing games and actually making, growing the scene.
Yeah, because Corey, for Leaping Lads, you said Russell did the audio, but you've done everything else, right? All the artwork,
Pretty much.
all the programming, all the design.
I had my buddy who's like a better programmer than me teach me some stuff, and like I think he might have coded a little bit, but it's probably like 98% my work.
Yeah, but like again, if you were part of a team and could delegate that out. Like this person's working on the art at the same time this person's working on the programming, at the same time this other person's working on the music
Right.
or the audio, then it really does synergize
Maybe.
how fast you get things done. Well, for game jams, that's definitely what you have to do. You
Yeah.
only have the weekend, so
And I don't think all of us are great at all 4 tasks. You know,
Right.
Sound, art, coding, director,
yeah.
or direction.
Okay, so let's get to your question now. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, of course. So I'm looking into writing a program
Uh-huh.
completely again.
Mhm.
I know this might be kind of subjective or, could be argued over, but what would you say is the most universal language of coding? The easiest?
C.
C++.
C++, C Sharp.
Yes, C++.
Something
and
with a C in it.
Unity uses C Sharp.
Yeah.
Unreal uses C++. I know as their code. You can also use Java or JavaScript.
I would say that just pick one.
Yeah.
Yeah, just pick any of them. Like Stencil, its backend is a newer language called HAXE, H-A-X-E, and it's nice because it actually breaks down into several other. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, but it's like ActionScript, JavaScript, C++, and something else.
That's it.
But really, just by learning one language, it now you already know that it works on several different platforms. But the main thing is that once you learn one, you've learned the process, and it's a lot easier to jump into a different language.
And
Yeah.
sometimes the coding is kind of similar. I mean, I started with C++. Java is really similar. I think
Yeah.
it uses the same syntax in places.
Well, my job I have now, I'm a data analyst at a healthcare company. I have no education and no training in data analytics. I program a lot of macros in Excel using the language called Microsoft VBA, Visual Basic. And I have no formal training or anything. I have my current job because I taught myself C# and Unity and still applied those skills to Microsoft Excel because it is very much the same concepts.
I built a haunted house scene out of Python. I don't even know Python.
Yeah.
And just because somebody needed a Raspberry Pi to detect motion, yeah, just picked up the guide and learned it myself right there.
Because no matter the language, it's all if, then, else. Like it's all the same concepts across the different languages.
So I would probably say start with C, or C++ or C Sharp, but take any one you want.
Yeah, I would say you did ask what is like the most universal, and it's like for games definitely, yeah, C and C++. It's like because that's like the low level language. C# sucks. Don't use that.
If you want to use Unity, that's what you need.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
this really great resource called Handmade Hero. There's this guy who is programming a game from scratch in C using no existing libraries and just from scratch. And he makes a video every step of the way and explains everything he's doing and basically teaches you how to do everything, including getting stuff to draw on the screen, initializing, making a window appear. I say if you really want to be a games programmer, follow that because it's you just have to put in the time to follow that and then understand what's happening.
How many hours of videos do you think he's got up there?
There's 480 something videos and it's not done. I think each one's at least an hour long, but it's that's a really good resource. Handmade Hero.
Yeah. Great question. Other questions from the audience? Anything? Yeah.
You piqued my interest with the VBA thing. My first coding language, I've been working on RPG in Excel for.
Man, I love Excel. I tell people if it were legal to marry Microsoft Excel in the state of Tennessee, I'd do it. Excel does
What
lots
about
of
other
things.
states?
She doesn't love me. That's for sure.
Yeah, I may have to move back home to West Virginia.
I was curious. So was that kind of your first foray into coding? It was for me because it was the first thing that Microsoft products are kind of easy to get your hands on, and you hit the record button and it shows you your code. Sometimes it's very bad code, but it shows it to you nonetheless.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my first step into it. I was curious what yours are, and I'm sure you guys have other experiences too. How did you get into this realm?
Videos about Unity. Daniel introduced me to it. There's a website this is all going to get confusing, called Udemy, okay? Udemy, and it's like the last part of academy, and it's supposed to be like the Academy of You, Udemy, okay? So he was like, hey, there's this Unity course on Udemy that's on sale right now. You need to get down on it, and so
$10,
so
yeah.
I did, yeah.
And that's how Haragana Breaker actually got built.
That's
because-
how here my game was born. Yeah,
Because it is one of the courses on how to make a breakout game.
yeah.
I've used that one too. It's actually quite well built.
Yeah, it's a
Easy to
really
follow.
good online course. So, I also use RPG Maker, and I've watched some YouTube videos about RPG Maker. But again, all my RPG Maker skills come from what I've learned in Unity and just applied to RPG Maker, which is a lot easier engine to use.
Steam, is it not? Is
Yeah.
the user interface with the sprites and stuff?
Right. It was on sale for like $20 this week. I don't know if it still is, but it'll be on sale for Black Friday and Christmas and New Year's. And like $20 for that game engine is nothing because it does so
What's the
much.
engine behind that? Like, what's the language that's?
Right now, JavaScript.
Yeah.
It used to be Ruby.
It used to be
yeah.
RGSS,
Oh.
whatever that. It's some kind of Ruby thing.
Yeah.
Ruby on Rails? No.
It's, man, I don't know.
I don't either. I don't use RPG Maker.
I started with RPG Maker 2003 and 2005.
Yeah.
A buddy gave it to me on a disc. I was like, this isn't real. And put it in my computer, and it was real. It's like, oh, I can make a video game.
Very real. Yeah. But that is a potential path if you learned coding or something through Microsoft VBA or something. Again, those same skills apply to Unity or Stencil or RPG Maker or whatever. I don't know if anyone else wants to share. What was your first programming?
I'll share
Introduction
my,
to programming?
I'll tell you my age with this one. Does anybody know what a Timex Sinclair is?
Nope.
Google
Timex
it.
Sinclair.
It is an
I
old.
think I'm older than you.
By the
I don't know
watch
what that
company?
is.
Yes, I guess. I don't know. All I know is my father had one, and that's where I learned. I happened to pick up a book of his and thought, well, this is kind of neat. I can make a dice game. I think it was craps, and I did. I built craps in a DOS-based like interface,
Cool.
and that was my start. And then I studied Fortran in high school. Don't do that. Don't learn Fortran. It's not going to help you much in the game dev.
I initially started learning Python a long time ago. Whenever I was in college, we had to learn it. I used to study physics, and we had to make like a binary star system and make a planet revolve around that system. And it was all obviously very math heavy, and more so than it was actually learning the program. But it got me into the sort of the idea of how programming works. And then after that, looked into a lot of game engines, Unity, Unreal. Unreal's a little different. I didn't get into it until it was free. Both Unity and Unreal are free, so I highly recommend you check them out. But Unreal has this thing called Blueprint, and it's a sort of flowchart kind of programming language, very visual. It is visual. And then Unity had both JavaScript and C#. Jumped into the JavaScript side, which apparently was the wrong way to go.
Yeah, that was the losing side.
Yeah, it was. I think I watched some videos from these guys called like the Tornado Bros or something like that. I don't know, they had.
What happened to my computer?
Oh no.
Speaking of JavaScript.
Oh yeah, see, that's what you don't.
Can somebody just turn that projector
Oh, that's
off
just Java.
for
That's the
me?
wrong Java.
Oh, Java.
Unrelated.
Unrelated?
Just shut the lid. Yeah.
Yeah, just hit that blue button to turn it off.
I'm trying
Or
to
something.
find.
Or he did it with the remote. Never mind. Thank you.
But then finally, I was going to say that Corey here actually did a talk a while back on the engine called Stencil, and it uses a version of MIT's Scratch or like their own sort of modification of it in the engine. And it's you can get it for free, and it's a little bit closer to actual programming, while still not actually being actual programming, as a sort of intermediary stuff.
They used it at the game jam, didn't you guys, in the back? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'd never
Scratch.
used Scratch before, and in the course of a weekend, you figured it out and made a game.
It's pretty simple.
Yeah, it's
really
intuitive.
It's just nodes. You connect nodes together.
Not really nodes. It's like,
Or
well, like most visual programming language are nodes. They're like floating squares, and you hook them up with spaghetti, and then you got to follow it in this two-dimensional space, and it hurts your head.
It's called spaghetti and node balls.
Yeah. But Stencil and Scratch use like, it's like code. Like you have
puzzle
lines,
pieces, right?
and then you like, instead of like lines of code, it's like blocks that you drag in, and each block represents like a line, like a function or something.
Like puzzle pieces
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
snap together.
They snap.
Speaking of, if you don't have any coding experience, I know that there are, with Unity and Unreal, I think they've got certain programs you can even download that do something similar, puzzle piece or node-based programming.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do a little art, connect some nodes together, you can build a game.
It's a good way to get into real coding too.
Yeah.
It's just because you learn the logic of it. Once you've got the logic down, it's a matter of learning the syntax and the APIs and stuff.
And if you don't understand what syntax and API are, that's okay. Come to one of our events, we'll teach you. I would say, too, we're maybe like an unfair representation of the group because we can all program within an engine. Whereas someone like Toya, our writer, she was initially not a programmer at all. She has like a PhD in English literature or something crazy. So she was just a narrative expert for game narrative. But then she's gone on and learned, I think it's called Fungus. It's a Unity plugin that is that. And now she's making like her own visual novels using that. So even someone from the more artistic side went and learned the programming. But we do want people from the different disciplines, as we have to call them, to come and participate. You don't have to code or be a programmer.
Why do we have to call them disciplines?
Because Toya insisted we called them disciplines.
Classic Toya.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Keep them coming. This is great. Great discussion. You guys in the back look like you want to ask something. Yes.
Would you want to develop anything other than iOS and
Yes.
PC,
Yes.
Steam,
Yes. Please.
Switch, Xbox, PlayStation.
I
yes.
have, so this is the curse of being, actually I had a question for everyone I was curious about, but as someone who has gotten very seriously bitten by the bug of game development ever since I started my tower defense game, I have like a list of game design documents of just other games that I want to make, and I put them in like a tier system now where I'm like, first I'm going to make this one because it's very simple, and then jump into this one, and it'll kind of like upgrade my skills in game development. And one of them I'm extremely excited about that would be a PC game. It's actually sort of a MOBA idea, but like League of Legends and Heroes of New Earth, but with a totally different spin on it that hopefully people will still play MOBAs by the time I actually make this. But there's definitely interest, and everyone wants to make games for just about anything. It's just that whenever it comes to like, in my own experience anyway, it's very anecdotal that it was a lot easier to jump into mobile development or Flash development. You could say like internet, like developing for like a Flash game or for Congregate or a Facebook game or something like that.
I think it's like the barrier of entry. Like, how low is the barrier of entry? So your lowest barrier of entry is probably building for WebGL, and then hosting that on like Congregate or Itch.io. And most of that stuff is free. So, I mean, you could, again, download Unity or Unreal for free, make a web game, and host it on Itch.io for free. And that's a pretty low barrier to entry. Something like Android, you have to pay $25 one-time fee to be a Google Play developer. And then I feel like that one, in terms of mobile, like that's the lower barrier to entry.
Oh, yeah.
Is Android and Google Play. iOS is a lot higher. You have to pay $100 a year to Apple. And you also usually have to build your game on a Mac computer. That's why I have a Mac computer, using Apple's own program called Xcode. So there's just an example of like, there's different barriers to entry. I think Steam is, I don't know, would you call Steam low or high or mid?
Probably low mid.
Low mid, and whereas something like PlayStation or Switch is going to be high.
Yeah.
High barrier to entry.
Although they're letting more indie in, it seems.
It depends. I've heard it depends. So Wolfgang said it depends on where you live. So if you go through Nintendo of America, they're very stringent. They're like, we don't want this crap on our console. And you go through like Nintendo of Japan or Europe and like, oh, like generic dress-up game. Hey, throw it at us, whatever. And then so you get approved in Europe and then it's available everywhere, even though North America's harder. That's...
That explains why my PlayStation game came from France, from Wolfgang.
Yeah, there is a game on the PlayStation Store that is, I don't know if you're familiar with Unity Asset Store, and Unreal has one also, and this may be good to talk about, is, some people make 3D models, or they'll make code that you can then buy and implement into your own Unity project. So maybe you don't need to actually create the 3D character model. You don't need to write the code. You can buy these assets that other people have made and string them up together. And as a practice of game design, I think it's really good. Like especially at game jams, I'm like, I'm not going to. For the game we worked on a couple of years ago, it was in a cave, and I was like, we don't have time to model a cave.
Right.
Yeah, so I just bought a cave scene from the asset store for like $10 or $20. I don't know, like it was worth it to not have to put in the work.
You paid
of getting a
$20
cave.
on your game jam game?
Yeah.
That is more investment than I've ever put in a game in my life.
I'm okay with it because, again, it's like we need a cave. We need a cave, all right? What else are you going to do? Pay the $20 and get the asset. But there's a game on the PlayStation Store that you can look at it, and it even says made with Unity in the trailer. And you can tell, and it says like written, created, programmed, designed, music, story by this one guy. You know, and you can tell he just took a bunch of Unity assets and strung them together and got it on the PlayStation Network. And then I asked Wolfgang about that, and he's like, he's in Europe. Like, he's in Russia or something.
I think I know which game that is.
Like Sword of Asmodeus or,
No, it's not that
Fortress. Like, it's got a stupid Englishy title, too. Like, you can tell it was not a native English speaker. And it's got, like, 1-star rating. Like, you can tell this is just some crap someone put together with Unity assets and somehow got on the PlayStation Store.
There's an Unreal counterpart to that.
Yeah?
I'm sure, how many people here have heard of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds?
Oh, yeah.
A very large portion of that, whenever it first came out, was stuff from the Unreal Asset Store. And then it just exploded, which, you know, and then people were like, oh, this isn't, what's the word I'm looking for?
That good?
It doesn't run very well because none of the models were
Optimized?
optimized. Yes, thank you. That was the word I was looking for. None of them were optimized. So of course they've been slowly trying to improve it from there. But that lowers the barrier of entry actually. Whenever you have high quality assets available to you from any engine, and there's a lot of websites too online that have a lot of free assets where people upload them. Like there's one called freesound.org if you want sound effects.
Yeah.
There's other ones.
Defont.com
Yeah, Defont.
or .org. That's where I
Yeah.
get my fonts.
And then
OpenGameArt.org.
there's one that has almost specifically 3D models and animations. Mixamo, that's what it's called. Mixamo, Mixamo, and they have animations galore, and then along with some 3D models as well. So the resources are there. So if you're really wanting to learn actually development, but you're like, I hate working with just squares, then you can download some stuff from these resources. Don't let not having stuff like that stop you.
Yeah. Pay the $20 for the cave.
I think the original question you asked was, do you want to make games for desktop instead of mobile? And it's like, absolutely I do. But the reason I'm making a mobile game right now is because I have way more faith in like mobile games money-making ability, like its commercial viability, than like releasing a game on Steam, because there are so many like good games that are released on Steam now that like nobody even plays because it's so saturated, and they all cost money, and it's hard to get people to pay money for games when everybody's a game developer these days. And so like a mobile game, so I do work with for Stencil, freelance work. I run their social media, and I see a lot of like every successful game on there is always a mobile game, and it's always a free mobile game with ads that pop up and like the option to remove ads, and like that's what I've seen to work. And those aren't my favorite kinds of games, but that's what I know can work, and so that's what I'm doing. And I'm trying to make a good game within those confines, but I would rather be working on like a console or a PC game, because those are the kind of games that I like, those like deeper experiences.
I think we all dream of someday having that cartridge or that disc that is our own, that we built, or that our studio or our indie
My
studio
very own
built.
Final Fantasy 15
Yes.
equivalent
Yeah.
that I made by myself.
Yep.
I mean, I've got it. Yeah, the Opus game, as I
Yeah,
call it,
the
is
Magnum
an RPG.
Opus.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their magnum opus, but when you go to a game jam or something, do not make your magnum
No,
opus.
don't.
Do not make that for your first game either.
I've been working on mine for about 10 years now.
There
and
you
all I
go.
have is like one demo of it and a 50-page outline story.
I started. I was bored at my parents' over Christmas last year, and I started writing the story and game design documents for my magnum opus, my someday game.
Yeah. What kind of game is that?
It's not Japanese education related. Well, I'll tell you about later. Because what I've found too is I've gone to conventions like this, and people be like, "Oh, you guys do games? That's so awesome! I've got this idea for a game," and then they open their mouth and they don't stop talking for 30 minutes, like straight, and that game will never get made. Like they wasted 30 minutes of my life, and that's happened to me 3 times. So that's 90 minutes. That's an hour and a half of my life gone. And I've tried to be polite. I've tried to stop them. I've tried to be like, it's not about the idea. It's about the execution. Well, do you have a game design document? You got some sketches? What do you got to show me that we can maybe talk about that's concrete? And it's just like diarrhea of the mouth for 30 minutes. And I know that game's never going to get made. So I don't want to be in that situation myself, because all of us here, we've been in the trenches. Like we know what it's like. So even if you ask me that, I don't even want to talk about it, because I know I've got a game design document, but I need something a little more concrete for us to talk about and get feedback on.
The story's going to be completely written. The characters are going to be designed. Everything's going to be done before I say a word.
Yeah. So I think the young man in the back has had a question for a while now.
That's good. Well, I was saying, to kind of bridge off of that, what about with, like, there's a lot of retro consoles that are getting, like, upgrades with, like, Retron, obviously, but then you have, like, Polymega and things like that, consoles that are made new to play old games. What about doing legacy game console development, like making something for the Dreamcast when they're making things that could play Dreamcast games that are a little more updated? So it's not as, like, because that's what I've always kind of wanted to do.
Yeah, that sounds like so much fun. I have no idea how to wrap my head around it.
That sounds so fun, yeah.
I will say that coding for like the NES, SNES is atrocious. And I have looked into doing it. I have thought of, because I have a few friends who have built and actually sell games on cartridges that they build that will work in the NES, SNES. I've got one at home from, actually it was more of a rip from another game, but still, they went, coded it, developed it, and I have one of the 200 copies of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
What game is that?
You don't want to know. It's too political.
Whoa.
Oh, wow.
A political
game.
game?
Yes.
Because we've been talking about like game engines like Unity and Unreal and everything. Like that's not an option. Like when you're in Unity, you're like, what's my platform I'm going to build on? Is it going to be PC? Is it going to be iOS, Android? Like I don't know how to operate without that.
You gotta learn, man. You gotta learn assembly.
Assembly,
I'll tell you, I'm too smooth brain for assembly. Like I'm running on a 9-volt brain right here. I can't use assembly. That's the way I'm making an NES game.
The worst part about coding it is not so much coding it, it's that you are really limited on memory.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah, just really limited. You've got to know how to make it or stretch something and make it work.
I want to make a Dreamcast game. That sounds fun, though.
We have some people in the group that are working with this program called Pico 8, and it's basically like working with a classic.
Yeah.
I mean, well, okay. I could be very. I'm sorry. I haven't worked in it. I could be very wrong.
But
It's
the
just that
8 means
it's very,
8-bit. How many
it's
colors?
very
You have only
limited.
like 16 colors you can use.
Yeah.
Or maybe 32. I think 16. I can't remember.
It's like 8 or 16. You're using like Lua though. Like you're not using assembly. It's like I don't think there are any memory restrictions either. They're like it's like a fantasy.
No, there
console.
are.
Are there?
Yeah. Yeah, because John Saba was like, I had to take this feature out of my game because I ran out of memory.
Memory or there? I know there is
file size.
Yeah, there's file size. Like it can only be so big. But I don't think there are like stringent like memory like RAM limitations.
Oh, okay.
So that's fun though. Pico 8. It's fun to like pretend you're making something for a console.
Come on in, you're in the right place. Whatever you were looking for.
GameStop. You're definitely in the right
This is it. Gonna be handing out games to people. Okay, y'all can come on in, hang out. If you got the next panel, that's fine. What's the next question we have for this panel of experts? Okay, right here, Superman.
So I hate to even ask this because I know everyone's in it for the passion.
For the passion,
For the
yes.
passion.
Yes, the passion.
But I'm also married, have a dev. I'm the only money provider in my family, and it'd be a super hard sell. Hey, I'm gonna go do this spend hours and years of my life without seeing anything. And you did touch on this a little bit, but I'm curious as to is it kind of the mobile gaming? Like, have you found success in monetizing this at least to an extent to make it enough of a side gig to warrant the billions of hours you put into it?
Not yet. This is my first attempt at making like a commercially viable game. Other than that, I've just been doing like the other ways I've made money is like either through game jams that pay money or like just freelance gigs, making art, doing programming. I think I get paid for music once for some reason, but
Wow. There's like hundreds of people in the group who would kill for that.
If you think about it, you got the asset store. There are people out there who will spend the $20 on a cave. If you
Yeah.
can build the cave, you can make an extra $20.
yeah.
Right.
So I have the luxury of living at home right now. I'm trying to get out pretty soon. So if this game doesn't do well, I'm just gonna do programming for whatever.
Like as a job.
As a job, yeah. So this is my this is my Hail Mary.
I would say I'm the person. I definitely like I had like a career going on, and then I decided like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I tried to do too many things at once. I tried to be a freelancer, like translator and teacher, while also start a game company, and like all of it was just like a total failure. And so I really kind of do regret making that choice of being like, yeah, I'm going to start a game studio and all this, and sacrificing my career. So the way you described your situation, if that's what you were thinking, I would say don't do it. Like, don't. I just got done doing it.
I don't have
Yeah.
to really, like jump in the water. I mean, I'm a sole provider, I got a family and kids.
Right. But even like
But
you,
I was curious of like, doing it as a side thing and then how much I'd actually
yeah, you may read though that like some people say, oh, if you've got 2 years of runway, 2 years where you could keep providing for your family or whatever, yeah, do it, jump into it. And I kind of feel like the opposite about that. But that's just kind of from my experience. I wish I had kept it up as a side gig and just as a hobby while still having a career.
There are people who've. Oh, sorry. I was just
No,
gonna
you're
say-
good. I was just gonna say I think the market is for game development whenever it comes to, especially when it comes to mobile, is incredibly volatile.
Yes.
So it's if you want to look at it that way, it's like you could either make it or you don't, and it'd be really hard to unless you have several games that are like doing sort of successfully, then you'll be fine. But
Yeah.
unless you're making one that you know for sure and you've got the ability to market it, 'cause that's another thing. You make a game, you throw it on the store. It's like there's so many games.
Yeah.
How are they going to find it? You got to tell everyone about it. Hopefully your family and friends will buy it, or they'll just play it and then you get the ad revenue, or you could even purchase advertisements. But then that's just sinking more cost into something that you're not sure is going to be successful.
I've
I'm
done
not
all
telling you
that.
not to do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that don't. I want you to look at it as it's going to be a large initial investment with unknown returns.
Most likely zero returns.
$5.
Is that kind of like the same concept as like SEO and whatnot for websites? I mean, there's a bajillion games on the App Store. I mean,
Yeah.
how does anyone find it?
You get featured by Apple. You make something that they will like. That's what I'm trying to do. You look at what they like, try and make something that looks like, hey, I can see this being featured. That's
Yeah.
what you do. And that's what I've seen that works. It's like I see the game and it's featured, and it's like, of course it was featured. That's what Apple likes. So you have to get featured by Apple, 100%. There are exceptions, like I don't know what happened to Flappy Bird. Like I don't know how that took off, but.
Well, there's one thing I like about Apple, about iOS specifically, is like if you're on the App Store and you search Japanese, do you ever notice how the first option that comes up is always a promoted, advertised option, and then you've got everything else? So there is something called App Store Optimization, ASO, which is like SEO. But that option to pay to be the advertised is, I think, really fair. And in Apple's case, if you just give them your credit card number and sign up for the ads, they'll give you a $100 credit. And that's what I did for my game. I did not spend any money advertising on the Apple Store. I just used like $90 some of that credit. And if you're advertising on Facebook or an app store or whatever, especially if you're talking to an investor, the metric that you have to measure is something called cost per install, or CPI. And so that's basically like if advertising, for every dollar I spent, one person downloaded my game, that's a CPI of $1. That's a cost per install of $1. If it cost me $2 to get that one install, that's a $2 CPI. So with the Apple App Store, I was getting a $1 CPI, which is supposedly pretty cheap in the mobile industry.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
And so, like, if I had the money, like I used that $100 credit, I think that's a pretty good sample size to say my CPI is about $1. If I had the funds, I would keep doing that, because there's articles that also rate the different advertising agencies. They're like Facebook CPI is $1.75, and Google search ads is $1.89. Like, that information's out there. Who has the best CPI for mobile apps? So Apple and the Google Play Store, same thing. They generally have the best CPI of all the advertising platforms. That's what I would do to market my game.
I know a dude who is wildly successful. Well, not wildly. He's relatively successful in the App Store. His games have been played millions of times, and I heard from him the other day. He was like, "Yeah, I have games where it's like, yeah, they get like five clicks from like search in the App Store. That's like 5 a day. It's like, that's nothing." So
you're talking clicks. You're not talking downloads.
Maybe downloads, maybe clicks.
Yeah.
Either way, it's nothing compared to like what he's gotten from, like, I don't know, features and other ways people find the app. So I don't know how important search is on the App Store. I'm not sure, because there's just so much.
People talk about it though. I mean, when you're making your game's description, you've got tags and all this stuff. So just like with SEO, I mean, there is a science and an art behind ASO, and it wouldn't hurt to know it.
Yeah, definitely.
It's probably not.
It's not something you can rely on.
Yeah.
People searching for something and finding your game.
Okay, we got about 4 more minutes or so. Who's going to have the honor of the last question? Anybody? Anything on your mind? Talk about feelings? Yeah. Throw it out there.
So, curious. I work on SSIS on a daily basis. I've got Visual Studio already. Is that, I think that's a good idea if you're trying to learn Unity? Is that like the preferred one pretty much? Or?
Right now it is, yeah.
Okay.
I think Unity actually will let you have Unreal Studio with it, correct? I got a copy with it.
Say that again?
You can get a copy of Visual Studio comes with Unity.
You said
Now
I'm
it does,
sorry,
yeah.
Unity. Did I say
He said Unreal. I was like, it's free anyway.
That's where
Unreal
I got
has their own.
confused.
Yeah, Unreal has their own.
Yeah. MonoDevelop used to be what came with Unity,
Yeah.
and then they switched to the Visual Studio. But even in the Unity settings, if you have another text editor, I mean, you could probably use Notepad or something
Use
stupid.
Emacs.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend. But you can set that in the Unity settings, what you're using. It's just easy to go with their default one, which is Visual Studio right now.
Is it Visual Studio or is it Visual Studio Code?
I don't know what that means. I don't know what the difference is.
So there's one.
Code's the one for PowerShell.
So yeah, VS Code is it's a really lighter. So I don't know, every time you try to launch Visual Studio, it takes like 20 minutes. But Visual Studio Code is almost instant. So it's something you may look into. It's just a lighter version of their Visual Studio.
Does it have like colors for like classes and things? Okay.
Yep, and then it's got tons of plugins that you can use to use for different languages.
All right, we should probably wrap up.
Yeah, we'll wrap up. We'll just finish. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. I hope the kids here left. We were trying to give them a greater experience than getting the high score. But I think we've had a good discussion, a great panel. Thank you all for being a part of it. Again, search for Nashville Game Developers on Facebook, on meetup.com. That's where you're going to get the most up-to-date information about our events. Hope to see you at a game jam or a work meet sometime. Some of us have cards, and we'll be hanging out here at the expo. If you got any other questions, you want to come up to us. Guys, enjoy the Grand Ole Game Room Expo. I've been having a blast. I hope you guys do too. So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Join our Discord.
Yeah, join our Discord.
Yeah, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time.
Donate to the Global Game Jam.
If you want to be a game developer, talk in our Discord.